And Karen?
I got to go to see where my great-grandfather was born, and it was a very small town with 64 people called
Beacon.
Beacon, and it's near
Hohenhamen.
yes.
He calls it the Ho-Ho Town.
And so I got to see his home. He was a schoolmaster, so his home and school were the same building. And I knew that my great-grandfather's room adjoined the school building and that he would have to jump out the window to avoid, the people who were students. And so I had a whole team of 2 mayors and about 10 other people who were hanging around town that day. And so they gave me a book, which was great. I gave them a book with photographs of my 1866 ancestor and his wedding anniversaries, 25th, 50th, all the way up through my granddaughters, just photos and photos of our farms in Illinois. And he went there and the family stayed there. And so then we got to go to this great church in the Ho-Ho town, the Lutheran church from the 1200s. They had all the books set out for me to go like 3 great-grandfathers back, and they had them bookmarked, and so I could see each thing. And I got to see this beautiful baptismal font from 1621 that the 3 great-grandfathers had been baptized in. And we had ice cream together. I'm probably going to be in the church bulletin. I know I'm going to be in the newspaper because the newspaper guy was there. And anyway, it was like a trip of a lifetime.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Pat?
Well, I met a cousin who I didn't know existed, and he's an international speaker, and he's written a book on the colonists from southern Germany. I had no idea my family was originally from southern Germany, and they, through a raffle, won the land that Denmark was trying to settle in the Schleswig-Holstein area. And so he had written this book about all of this, and I have it. Of course, it's in Deutsch, so my Herr Professor back in Nebraska will be very excited.
Very busy, huh?
Yes. Anyway, that was wonderful, and I stayed with a local, I don't know if he's really a historian or not, but he really wants to know what happened to the people who emigrated from Friedrichsholm and that area. And so I stayed overnight with he and his wife Jürgen and Angelika Groth was her name. And I got to see the churches and the baptismal font, and I even went inside the house that my one great-grandfather was born in, and have a picture of the original picture of the home with the sod, well, not sod, thatch roof, and met the people who live there now, and saw the home where my cousin was born too, and then saw the homes where my great-grandmother was born and lived. So it was a wonderful experience.
Yeah, finally, after all this research, it
Yes.
puts it in a visual for you.
Right.
Grace?
Okay, well, I got to go to Ziegelhorst, which I'd known about for a long time, actually, but, but it was exciting to actually go there. My host, didn't really have any German, but he did find a gal whose English was quite good, so that made things so much easier. First place we really went was the church, which, the original church goes back to the 800s, when it was a wooden church. Then in 1230, which is during the Crusades, became a stone church. And then in the 1500s, when it went Lutheran, it got expanded again. So I got to see different areas on that, and other people there to welcome me, including a cousin I didn't even know about. Anyway, we had to sing a hymn. Okay, fortunately I knew the tune, and they actually had the words in English for me.
They made you sing?
Well, we all sang.
Oh.
They sang in German, I sang in English.
Oh, my.
At least I sing in a church choir, so it wasn't that intimidating. Okay, so we spent quite a bit of time at the church. Then we went to my host's home, but we stopped at several of the sites where houses associated with my family, because I knew about numbers for the houses, and of course, they've all been renumbered now back in the 1970s. Although, as far as what I could see on the numbering stuff, it didn't make any sense at all, because it didn't seem like there was any kind of consecutive thing on it. So,
No rhyme or reason.
right, yeah, absolutely no rhyme or reason on that, but I was taken to, like one of my great-great-grandmother was born. It's a different house now, but it was that location. And then my host is a farmer, and he had to get his tractor out, and he had to, take me up past where my great-great-grandmother was born and up the hill. So I'm hanging on in the tractor, and that's so I could get a picture from up higher, more of the valley, kind of thing, before we came down. But they had lunch for us, and well, we had lunch. Okay, someone from the newspaper came in, and I was interviewed, and my host was interviewed. About different things, having to do with, why I came and stuff like that, kind of thing. And then we went over to Rintown to the museums to get a little more background on things about the area. We also went up to Castle Schomburg, the Schomburg Schloss, okay, and spent a little time there, and later we came back and went above that, up on the top of the hill is a restaurant, and that's where we went over, okay, his research, my research, and we still haven't quite figured out for sure. One person has, but it's like, not sure if it's two different women, or maybe it's just one woman, but we still have to work on that. We haven't fully proven it, but I think we're close. Anyway, so we had an absolutely great time.
Well, that takes an interesting mystery to solve there,
Right,
right?
yeah, but we got it straightened out more because we did figure out who my great-great-grandmother's parents were. I didn't have that when I came.
Nancy?
Well, like everybody else, going to the churches and I touched the baptismal fonts and the buildings, anything I could find that had been there when my ancestors had been there. Everybody was gone by 1836, so that was not as easy as for some people to find things that were there then. But I think what impressed me the most was how welcoming and excited the people were that I met today, because when you're sitting in Oregon and you think these people are doing this as a favor for you, and then to come here and find out that they're so excited and you're doing them a favor to let them hear about the story of the people who left, to share. One person he's written a 2-volume book about the farm families of Fushtor, and he was so excited to be able to share that with somebody. And I understood that completely. And the people who lived on the farm now, even though they're not bloodline related, the history connects those families with the name of the name that's on the farm. The buildings are different, but the name is still on the farm. But how that name, they're not blood related to me. Because of marriage things, and those farm names, and learning how the farm names worked, and how I'm not blood related to anybody with my name, because they all just married into the farms. So.
But they were very welcoming and gave
It
us
was
coffee
amazing
away.
to me, yeah. I had 3 people there who were born, 2 were born on the farm,
And they just were with us all day, just taking us around, and then the historian who would, tell us about the story. And then the second day, we went to Kelpta, I'm learning, and where they have a shrine that's at the end of the procession from Osnabrück to this shrine. And the man, I found out once you look the people in the eyes that are telling you, even if all they speak is German, if you look at them in the eyes while they're talking and look interested, they'll talk forever. So even if you only have half an hour scheduled, if you look interested, pretty soon, they're taking you to the back room behind the Suffering Mary statue from the 1400s and opening the box that has her crown on it and letting you see her crown. Or they're unlocking those metal cages with the relics in them. Now, I had no idea what a relic was, but I do now, or how important they are. But I mean, if you just show a little bit of interest, they're doing amazing things. So I think the people was what impressed me.
Great.
So.
That is interesting, and I forgot to tell some of you this, is to ask when you go to your towns, am I the first person to come back to this town? And we asked,
and I was,
and she was. And so sometimes this is the first person that's ever come back to look for them. So like you said, they're very excited sometimes about that. Barb?
Okay, I went to 2 different towns. On the first day I went to Murtzen, and we had a big entourage of people waiting as we pulled up in our taxi in front of the town hall, the mayor and some other people, and a cousin that I didn't know I had. And they took us upstairs and talked to us a little bit about our families. We shared what we knew and they told us what they knew. And took us on a tour of the town. And we saw the family farm, which is now owned by another family. And I have to just second what everybody else said about how welcoming they were and how interested they were in what happened to the families after they came to America, as much as I was interested in what their lives were like here. And then on the second day, I went to Freckenhorst, and I had a guide who knew everything about every building and every person in the town. And he had been the headmaster at the academy where my great uncles had gone 150 years ago. And so he had actually provided me with a list of the curriculum that they had back then, and told me about what life was like, showed me where they used to sneak out and drink beer. And then, of course, the churches in both villages were, wonderful to see, and to know that of any place in any of those towns, you knew that they stood in that doorway, were baptized in that baptismal font, and you were actually there, in the same place.
It's very emotional, yes. And like you were saying on YouTube, the historians of that, just like with genealogists, when you get somebody that will listen to you, I got all this knowledge, please, somebody listen to me. So they're probably glad that somebody was asking them questions. Oh, that's wonderful. That sounds like a fantastic day. Here's the next one.
Okay. I came with my daughter, and we were researching my grandmother in Gotha, which is not in the state at all. We're in Thuringia, I think I'm saying that right. And we went and we stayed with another couple in their home, which was also a historic home. And so it kind of reminded me probably what my grandmother was in. It was 3 stories, and my grandparents had lived on great-grandparents had lived on one floor, and my parents, another part of the family lived on the second floor. And then when my grandparents actually went back and stayed for 8 years in Germany, they lived on that floor, and then a 3rd floor was rented out. But I didn't know if that was proved or not until we were taken to the archives the first day, and I found my relatives. There were all the siblings for my grandmother were there, the birth and the death certificates, and her parents, and a brother. So I was able to get all the birth and death certificates and 2 marriage certificates too. And I also learned of 2 siblings that I did not know exist that had died young. And I also obtained the trade registers for my cousin Martha that had worked in the town of Gotha. And she had died when my grandmother and grandfather and mother had gone back to Gotha along with my grandmother's parents. And then my grandmother took over this business of Martha, and she was a milliner. And she was a seamstress when I was a girl growing up, so she knew all that too. And so we actually got to go to the place where they actually owned the millinery store and where they operated it. And now it's a pizzeria, so that was pretty interesting. That kind of fit in with the American way there. And then we also had gone up to Friedenstein Castle, and we got to eat outside in the gardens, and I ordered dumplings there, which I always like to cut them open and see, because I'm so used to my grandmother making them with the breadcrumbs inside, and that was a big thrill for me, and I learned that that's the only place they do that, and they have the breadcrumbs inside. And then we also visited my grandmother's and great-grandparents' home. They found that for me, and we also visited the genealogical society. We had another gentleman that was going around with us, so I got to see that and see where they worked out of. And we also visited the church where all the family had been baptized in. We had to take a real quick stop there. But I think the highlight for me was my grandmother had also worked at smaller Inselberg. There's Greater Inselberg there, and then smaller Inselberg, and the original guest house that was there is where she had worked as a hired hand, either a cook or a waitress or something for the tourists there. And it's still standing there, and I happen to know that when my grandmother came to America, she was a traveling companion for, there were 3 daughters of the owners of that building. And they happened to ask if they knew the history of the guest house, and they had a picture of the father of those 3 girls there, the Malshas. So we got to eat lunch there too and visit that place.
Where she was.
Yeah, where she had actually worked, and so I really enjoyed that. And I think another special highlight for me was coming with my daughter Darsha. She's been kind of on the edge of interested in genealogy and that. I think this just opened it all up. She loved being with everyone and hearing the stories, and she's recognizing the value of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Very
great, because we
important.
need some young ones in there.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly
But
it.
that's good, and it's fun too to be able to tell people that are semi-interested in genealogy, so they'll listen to you. I know when I try to talk to my family, everybody just rolls their eyes. Yeah.
Call you Snoopy.
But so anyway, it's fun to be somebody that gets excited for you when you get something good like that. So.
Exactly. And we went to Cologne and Dusseldorf and met with other friends before we came here and hooked up with a family tree tour. But I'm still getting contacts from those guys wanting to know, how's it going? What's going on? What have you done? They want to know if this tour is better than their tour.
Well,
And of course, we've had all our experiences on the train.
yes, we have. It's been an experience, but tomorrow is our longest ride on the train, so you think you've had it before, so we have to be ready. But Matisse, what time are we leaving?
7:20. No, 7:50.
Oh my goodness.
7:15? Yeah, we have to get up early, so you have to snooze on the train. It's a long ride.
And what time will
50.
breakfast be?
50.
750.
50.
What time was breakfast be, Matisse, did they say?
7 o'clock.
7 o'clock,
Okay.
so.
Come down ready to go.
Yeah, come down, be ready to go, and But as you saw in the picture, the Immigrant Museum is, well, after you've had all this experience now, we've seen how they lived, you've been to their hometowns and seen, you know, where they lived, and now you're gonna see how they left for most of the people. So it kind of puts the ending on the story then too, so. What?
I didn't go.
Huh?
I didn't tell my story.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry.
That's all right. I've got a couple stories, but I'm only doing yesterday's story, and then part of this morning. But I went with Christine and Elrich we started out in Kirchlinger at the church, and I got to see that and take pictures. And then we went over to 3 farms that were kind of in the Kirchlinger and then Hayford area. So I got to see the Nolta farm and then the Meyer farm. The Meyer farm is a firehouse museum, or fire trucks and different emergency equipment. It's a museum now. And what I found after going to a lot of these different farms is that nobody's really farming anymore, but they're using their farms or their buildings in very neat ways. So I saw the Stinkemeyer farm, and then I went and saw the Obersudermeyer farm, and their farm is like the big house is turned into a store for horse equipment. And then the other part of it was like not really an antique shop, or like secondhand stuff that you can buy. So that was really neat how they did their farm. And then we went up into Matthias, I don't know how to pronounce that town. Begins with a Q.
Quenna? Stiftquenna?
Yeah. Yeah, we saw a very, very old chapel. And Rona Farm would be right across from the chapel, the old farm. And then I got to see the new farm that was done in, I think, 1890. And then we went on down into Bunda and saw the church. And then that ended yesterday, so I got to see a lot of farms. And then they asked me last night if I wanted to come over there this morning to go to Hayford and see the church and where the Kirchhoff farm would have been, and then to where Holland is. I thought my ancestor, when I first found out that, died in Holland, thinking Holland, and there's a little part of Hereford that is Holland. And there was a sign on a building, and then I got to kind of see the houses that would have been like what theirs would have been if it was there. And then we went to the last church, was St. Mary in Hayford, and they actually had an old cemetery, and they had stones, and there was a stone there of one of my ancestors' nephew. He was a priest, so that's why and a huge stone under a tree. I mean, everybody can imagine that that's where they would want to be, their last place, but it was just beautiful, and seeing all the old stones. Didn't have time to look at them all, but just to see them was really neat, and I'm sure mine didn't have any stones, so.
Well, sometimes we saw one church where they had found old stones underground and put them back up again.
Yeah. And I did on the one farm that I saw, there was a stone in the corner between a barn and the fence. It was just sitting there along with a bunch of other stuff. So they do sometimes keep them and put them in places so people can see them. So that was kind of neat too.
But she got a lot of research too, but it's also good to be able to put, like I said, a visual to these places that you've been researching for so long.
Because I'm pretty much finished with my research, so now I feel like I can just kind of put it all together now. That I've kind of seen where they lived, where they went to church, you know, their lifestyle, their culture, and maybe work on a book.
Good. That's what we need, so, I mean, that would be wonderful to hand down to your family, so. And like you said, maybe we can get some of these young people
And
interested.
then this lady, I'm gonna have to hire her, because she has Westerkappel, is that how you pronounce it? Westerkappel. Has researched all
And you
families
have
and
the other
farms
one,
over there.
Osterkappeln, do you have that?
Some of it, yeah.
Oh, because in the town where I lived, there was 13 families from Osterkappeln that started the first Catholic church.
Yeah, Osterkappeln is north of Osnabrück, so it's not close to Westerkappeln.
Oh, wow, interesting. All right, well, we gotta put this room back together for breakfast, so you heard what time we